This is a workshop called Make Your Website Awesome and Make It Yours. We are here to help you awesomize your website, whether you are a congregation, a UU group, a cluster of folks, a camp, whatever you are. We have some tools and tips to help. Volume, thank you. We have some tools and tips to help you with making a great website. My name is Sarah Gibb Millspaugh, and just a moment here. There we go. And this is Christopher Wulff, and we'll take a second to introduce ourselves.
So as you can see from the board up there, I am a seminarian, a candidate for UU ministry, and a Canadian. So you might note my abouts and out and about and about, and that it's all going to sound a little bit weird to you, and there might be U's in the words like color, so I beg your forgiveness. I'm also a web designer and a programmer, mostly in web technologies, and I'm the admin of the UU Social Media Lab and started the UU Website Lab, which is places on Facebook where we answer questions from congregations about their websites and the strategic use of technology in their congregations. So that's kind of who I am, and I'll let Sarah take over again.
Okay. And I am the UUA's Outreach Associate for Digital Ministries. I work in the Outreach Office, which is an office that started just after General Assembly last year, and I get the joy of helping us tell our story, say who we are, what we do, and why it matters, and helping us tell that through a variety of digital media as Unitarian Universalists. I am a UU minister and have been for 10 years, and I've served in a congregation before where we had a website and everybody tore their hair out about it and nobody had time to do things on it. So I'm very familiar with the struggles of congregations working to maintain effective websites. And I should say, in deference to Chris, I am an American. So you'll notice American spellings, American pronunciations, all those things in my slides.
I might say sorry from time to time as well.
So we have a new tool coming. How many of you heard about this in Peter Morales' report, a template for websites? Yes, this is very exciting. Our outreach office is working with Chris to develop a tool which is basically a formatted template with spaces for images, spaces for text, a well-tested menu for congregations, insert your logo, insert your stories, and make it go. And it's going to be available for download from the UUA in September. And you're going to get a preview of this site today and learn about some of its functionality. And whether or not you use the WordPress template, this workshop is relevant because it's talking about how to create effective websites and how to do the effective communications that are part of it. And this WordPress is a great tool to make the technology a lot easier so you can focus on the communications aspect. There is a UU template on WordPress. This is going to complement that, so it's another choice. We're going to focus on understanding users, talk about user experience and user personas, and we are going to also talk about building a site, the technical side a bit and the content side. I see someone at the mic.
I'm wondering if it's possible for us to get Wi-Fi so we can get online. Well, no.
I'm very sorry. I wish we could. Things at the convention center are complicated in that respect. But I encourage you to look at some of these sites and links afterward. I will say that this is being video recorded, and we are going to be putting the slides online as well. So if there's a link that you miss or something you want to follow up on later, you can go on uua.org. I'm not sure exactly when it will be up. It takes a little time to produce the video and the links, but you can get those from our website after the workshop. All right, Chris. The slides will be up there too.
So I'm going to ask you to take a moment, and I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine the best congregational website you've ever experienced. Can you see it in your head? Okay. Well, So now that you have that rosy picture in your head of that fantastic experience, I want you to take a moment and think about the worst congregational website experience you've had. Yeah.
Think about it.
So I'm going to ask you to turn to your neighbor and talk a little bit about what those experiences were like and what made the difference between the two. Okay, so turn to a neighbor, tell that story. And a hush fell over the crowd. Hush. We're going to borrow a bit from youth culture. We appreciate a lot of their tools. So can I get a couple of volunteers tell me in just a few words what characterized some of the best experiences you had? Yep. An up-to-date website. Actually current information. I have to tell you, I visited a site just a little while ago that had 2013 on the homepage. I was like, that's a lot of months ago. Yeah. Somebody else, yes. Simplicity, clarity, and good visuals. Absolutely. Yep. In the yellow. Sorry? A responsive site. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but yeah, for sure. Ease of navigation. It doesn't make you think. That's an interesting. I am not entirely sure how I would test for that, but okay. Sir, you had a comment there. Nope. Yep. Lots of white space. Lots of space around the visual. Yep.
Strong navigation and well-written content.
Well-written content. That's great. So now we're going to go to that dark place. What were some of the things that characterized unpleasant web experiences?
Too many words.
Too many words.
Our website is the worst ever.
Okay. Well, we'll tour to yours later, I guess. Yeah. It looked like it was written with a typewriter. Okay. So don't use Courier maybe as your... Yes. Yep. Not testing for error pages and dead links.
Filled with abbreviations and acronyms that only who's already knowledgeable about that site can do.
Yeah, in-group language. Absolutely. In the... Yep. So what? Yeah, the lacking the basic information, the clear information that the majority of our users are looking for the first time they visit the site. What's happening this Sunday? Where are you? Yep. And I think that's about the time we have for that. Yeah. So that's great. And I see there's still lots of hands, and I have to tell you, it was amazing to hear the rush, like the roar come up as people have experiences with this stuff. Can I do a quick show of hands? Who in the room is a content manager for a site? Okay. And who is a technical person for a site and not the content manager as well? Okay, so so we've got some technical folks in the room. We've got lots of content folks. Who's working on a website coming out in the next year? Yeah, okay, well, you're all going to be my testers.
Excellent. So what made the difference between the best and the worst? It was largely your experience of using the site. The experience of the user, this should seem elementary, but it hasn't always been. The experience of the user is the first and foremost factor in the success of a website. Yet, how many people plan a site that way? I remember when we were designing the site for my congregation, we were thinking, okay, what information do we need to have up there? Okay, what are our departments and our groups in the church? How do we get them all up there? How do we do this? How do we do that? We were very focused on the information that we wanted to broadcast. We thought, oh, we need some pictures. Yeah, we'll put up some pictures. That's good. But we didn't give a lot of thought to what does it feel like to go to the site? Does it feel like our congregation? Does it feel like who we are and who we want to project in the world? And we also didn't do any user testing. We just made the decisions based on what we thought was going to be right. And the result was a site that no one was really very happy about. So user experience, this is a whole new field that's arising in in web design and design of applications and mobile devices. It is a different way of looking at things. And it's one that I think actually can come quite naturally to us as people who work in congregations. We often think about the experience of Sunday morning. What does it feel like to come in to our sanctuaries? What does it feel like when you come up and you try to struggle through to find parking, and you get up to the front door and you are looking around where to go? How does that feel? But user experience helps us look beyond that, because people are having experiences of our congregations and groups long before they ever come to the door. Their experience begins with their contact with us online. So for example, if someone is on they're on Facebook and they see this fantastic post by a congregation, and then they go to that congregation's group on Facebook, and then they decide they are interested in participating some more. And then they look for the congregation online and they can't find it. It doesn't come up in the first Google results. And then they're like paging around and looking for it. Like their user experience is already happening. It's already starting before they've even looked at the website. So we really try to do a lot of design with our site and our sites so that the experience can be positive from the start. And that involves giving good search positioning. It also involves the actual, like how it feels to make the site. A good design, the website UX Myths says, UX is the abbreviation for user experience. They say a good design is pleasurable, thoughtfully crafted, makes you happy, and gets you immersed. Isn't that how we'd love people to feel about our congregations and groups? So there's this thing called feelings. This was going to be an animated slide. Our animations kind of disappeared in the transition to being offline, so pretend you don't see the feelings at the bottom. We often don't recognize how much someone is deciding what they think about us based on how they feel. And their experience of their website is largely, the conclusions that they draw about us are largely based on their experience. So think about those emotions that you experienced during those positive website interactions. You're satisfied, right? You feel satisfied. Like, yes, I got what I needed. And there you also can feel excitement and wow, just this sense of awe. And then you go back to the emotions that you experience with the worst website. It's frustration, it's overwhelm, confusion. And these emotions lead us to conclusions. You know, we have that terrible frustration with the website. We're left with an impression these folks don't know what they're doing. Or gosh, their congregation's really hard to get involved in. I'm not welcome here. This is some kind of insider club. But if they're feeling the satisfaction, they got what they needed, they found it easily, a sense of excitement that leads to conclusions like, wow, I like these people. I want to come here. I could fit in here. I would be included. They are cool people to affiliate with. So it's important to tend to the feelings. And a way you can get to the feelings is to spend some more intention knowing your users. Who are the people that are coming to our sites? We often think about the active participants in the congregation and the prospective participants in the congregation as our primary users for our sites. We also have another group, non-participants that have specific needs. Like say they are looking for a wedding and they need to figure out how to talk to somebody at your congregation about that. Or they're coming to the town's environmental group is showing a film at the church that they're renting, and they're looking for directions on how to get there. And you have also appreciators and allies. And those are folks in the community who might never affiliate with us, but can partner with a Unitarian Universalist congregation or group to do particular activities or events. And the appreciators and allies can be people who are not even anywhere near us. I mean, for anybody who goes to, let's say, a congregational Facebook page, there are people who like that page, who live nowhere near that congregation. And they're seeing the postings, they're getting connected with it. It's the same with the website. People who live nowhere near are checking out our sites and developing impressions about Unitarian Universalism from them. And we also have just people like reporters and the general public. Like, you get in the newspaper because you're doing this great climate justice event, and the reporter goes to the site to find out, okay, what do they believe? What do they stand for? What are their values? And just the general public who might have some desire to know about us. So there need to be some decisions in looking at all these different audiences and deciding who you really want to clearly communicate to. And a great tool for doing that is developing user personas. This is developing actual fake people who you use to view your website through their eyes. I'll introduce you to a couple. This is Jason. Our pictures are a little dark in here. He doesn't always take pictures in such dark rooms, Jason. Jason is a white teenager. He's 17 years old. He's in high school. He's gay. He has a profound spiritual life, and he can't quite put a name on it. He doesn't know if it's God. He doesn't know if it's just the human spirit or this kind of life force, but he feels it. He's connected with it. He wants a place to engage. So in developing a persona, you develop, what are some key things about this person? What are they looking for? So Jason, for this case, we'll say Jason lives near Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which is not always a gay-friendly area of the country. And a friend tells him that his spirituality sounds so UU, and that he should go check out the website of the Oak Ridge UU congregation. So let's look at this website through Jason's persona. Here's their lovely website. It got kind of darkened in the transition to the slide here, but you can get a good sense of it. It says, Rainbow Camp begins June 15th. And it says, welcome to the Oak Ridge Unitarian Universalist Church. And we are a lively, welcoming, diverse community practicing the progressive faith of Unitarian Universalism. At ORUUC, people claim many different spiritual paths and practices: Christian, atheist/agnostic, Jewish, pagan, Buddhist, questioning, seeking, wondering, loving, and others. But we walk together in love. So looking at this site through Jason's eyes, what do we see? This is a spiritually alive place. This is a place where my spirituality could be explored, a place where they're going to understand me and my active spiritual life. Wow, this is incredible. So, what do you think? What do you think his experience is so far? Nod heads for good, shake heads for bad? Good. But then Jason's gay and he's 17 years old. So what are some of the other things he's wondering about? He's wondering about, will they accept gay people? Also, what about the youth programs? And so then that becomes our guide to look at some other parts of the site. So, we're looking around on here. Okay, where do we click to find out about gay people being welcome? Where do we click? Welcoming, maybe. Is there a welcoming place? Yeah? Yeah. Well, it turns out the place where it's most addressed is the visitors part. So that's an interesting piece right here, is that there's a little confusion. Where does somebody click to find out if this is a welcoming congregation? And so if we click on visitors, this is where we find the frequently asked questions. Where are you located? What do people wear on Sunday morning? What happens in your Sunday service? And I'm transgender. Will I feel welcome? Is there a private bathroom for me to use? And how do I become a member? And so, Jason's looking at this and, wow, well, it doesn't say gay people are welcome, but it's talking about transgender people being welcome. So, they're probably pretty welcoming. And the truth is, this congregation is tremendously welcoming. This is a vibrant, just wonderful place for people to be, and a real beacon of LGBTQ inclusion in that part of the country. And so how do we show that through the website? You know, using this user persona and looking at it through Jason's eyes, we see, you know, it's not that clear. But for the congregation, if the congregation's developing the site, they're like, well, of course everybody knows that we're welcoming of LGBTQ identities, of course. But the user persona gives you an insight into something that the congregation might not know. And so then where does he look for information about the high school youth group? Maybe he clicks up on get involved. Then he's like, not there. Maybe grow in faith. And so he clicks on grow in faith and he finds out a little bit more information. And then he decides, okay, yeah, I'm going to give this a go. Now let's try another persona. This is Trisha. She's 37 years old. She's a teacher. She's atheist. She's in a multicultural family. She's African American. Her husband is white. Her husband believes in God, and their kids are asking them all these big questions. Sounds like a group that is ripe for UUism. And so they live near Cambridge, Massachusetts. So they check out the website of First Parish in Cambridge, which is a very intentionally multicultural congregation. And so here's the site, and it says, wow, look at that. Okay, so we're looking at this with Trisha's eyes. All right, a multicultural, spirit-filled, justice-making community. Wow. And then they have this wonderful piece that says, you are loved inherently, unconditionally, infinitely. You are free to find your own path. You are called to serve others, work for justice, heal the earth. So, you know, what's she thinking here? Yeah, this could be. But what do they really believe about God? Because my husband and I really don't agree on that. And how am I going to know that it's okay to be an atheist and it's okay to believe in God here? So then she clicks around, and she tries a few different menu boxes up here to no avail. And finally she settles on welcome. And then she's like, okay, under welcome, there's what Unitarian Universalists believe. But you start to notice with her persona, like she had to spend some effort. She had to think. That man said, don't make me think. Yes. She had to think about where do I find what UUs believe. And then she goes to that page, and her eyes immediately go to the bolded headers. You know, what Unitarian Universalists believe. 7 principles, 6 sources, bullet points. And so those are directly taken from the UUA. But her eyes, like most people, skip over the introductory text that frames it all. The introductory text is a place that has a key to what is happening. It says, as Unitarian Universalists, we are not like most religious communities. We don't expect to think alike about life, death, creation, and God. Instead, we share a deep commitment to love, service, freedom, justice, and spiritual growth. So you see, this is another way that we learn. She finally finds the page, and her eyes go right over the piece that tells her about what UUs believe. There's someone at the mic who looks like they have an urgent point.
Do you have any data on how many clicks people will make before they give up and go to another site?
That's a good question about data and number of clicks. I'm sure that's out there. I don't have it at my fingertips, but I do know that it's not that many. Chris has that at his fingertips.
Typical bounce rate satisfaction is 4.5 seconds.
4.5 seconds.
4.5 seconds. That's what the Center for Church Marketing, that's what their research said.
Yeah, 4.5 seconds.
You made a positive impression.
Yeah. Why don't we keep going through this presentation? We want to reserve a lot of time at the end for questions, and our ability to do that will rest on being able to go through. So some of your questions, if you have them, hold on to them, write them down, so we can make sure to address them before we end our time. So then she wants to know what her kids are going to learn. Her kids are asking all kinds of questions about life, death, God, etc. So she looks around, okay, where do I go? Children and youth. So that was easy. She's on children and youth. And then there's some options here, and she chooses what we are learning. which is really nice. It's a really nice option to have right there, because then she gets right into it and she sees, it lists these different programs for the different ages, and she sees that each one of them engages kids in some of life's difficult questions, like, where did people come from? What are we doing here? What happens when we die? And she says, yes, this is exactly the kind of thing my child's been asking me. So this content is designed by the congregation to answer prospective parents' questions and help them know how the congregation will help them raise their children. So thank you to both of these congregations. Their ministers gave us the blessing to look at their sites together and see what we can learn about them. But as you can see, personas can be extremely helpful in looking at a site with fresh eyes. Usability.gov is a website, and they name these various benefits of personas, that they focus your content decisions, and they help you test and prioritize what you're trying to say. They also help you evaluate new content and features. Like you might say, oh gosh, we really should have new content that says much more about what we believe in our own voice on our site. Or we should have new content that talks about us being a welcoming congregation. And they also help us write for the appropriate audience and make good design choices. It just gets us out of our own heads to use it. Our websites are really our front door, and we need to embrace that in this day and age. And we can embrace it and use it well by making our sites engaging and effective, and we can make them with the new UU template, which Chris is going to give us a preview of right now.
Sorry, we're going to turn the lights on and off on you a few times. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about how we got to where we came from, and so I've always enjoyed kind of, hymns and the songs we sing and how much the songs reveal about our websites. But the web, 10 years ago when we started to get our congregations online, there was a huge barrier to entry that was you needed somebody in the congregation who spoke the language. And that's the piece that the internet is largely about, is composed of people who speak the language, who can write that language. And that changed towards the early mid-2000s. And it's as simple as ABC. Boxes put the ability to contribute, edit, and control. And so the web has transformed itself from a place where anybody can be a content producer and a content contributor and a manager of a site. You no longer need to speak the specific language, which in most cases in our congregational sites is HTML and CSS, sometimes JavaScript and PHP, but we won't talk about that later. But these boxes are what we call a content management system. So I did a little survey last year on the website lab around how many congregations were still running without CMSs, which is what a content management system is, and how many were. And there was a much higher percentage than I expected. At that point, there were about 25% that were still running in static HTML, CSS, without a content management system. And so what that meant was those congregations were still in a position where there was a gatekeeper to the site. And not only does that kind of create problems where the technical person is deciding on your communications message, but it also produces a system where you're highly at risk and vulnerable to that person getting hit by a bus. And that's a big deal. It also you're putting an enormous burden and turning it into a much bigger job than it needs to be. So the more we move towards systems that enable more people to participate in the production of the content on the websites, the better off we'll be. I feel like there's a song in there too, but yeah, the more we get together, exactly. So why a CMS? What do we get from content management systems? WordPress is a CMS. Joomla, Drupal, Squarespace, Wix, Weebly. I'm trying to think of the other ones that have been mentioned in the website lab in the last year. I think that's about it. So one of the pieces that we get out of a CMS is that we get a consistent design from page to page, which actually is not just about enforcing standards, it's about helping users. Users benefit from things not moving around on the page. If the search button isn't where the search button was on the last page, I've got to look for the search button again. And so the more we can standardize those pieces, the more our ability to scan a page is enhanced, the more that we can stick to the structure. And CMSs allow us to do that by saying, this is the box you put the title in. You don't get to change the color of the title, and you don't do that, and the title always shows up in the same place. Okay, so that kind of piece is largely about helping users to use the site more effectively. Content management systems take the complexity out and make just the whole administration simpler. And they also give us the advantage of structured data. Has anybody been to searched on Google and seen a result come up that has 4 stars on it and has a bunch of details and pops up another box that has their office hours and their address and a map and all that stuff? The way that's achieved is through structured data. Okay, so when we fill out content on our websites, if we enter it as an event, it has different data fields than a standard page does, or than a sermon page would. And so what we want to do is standardize those pieces and follow the norms that are set by the rest of the web. Okay? So we typically don't have reviews on our sites. I can't imagine that as an aspiring minister I would ever want people putting reviews on my sermons. I feel like that wouldn't really be a safe space for me. But there are all kinds of other pieces of structured data, particularly events. And that's a piece that we would like to be able to draw our data out of our sites and share them more readily. So when you share an event to a Facebook page, that Facebook knows how to interpret it. So that Facebook knows, okay, well, this is the start time, that's the end time, it's in this time zone, I know how to create an event out of that. So that's kind of why, those are the basic reasons why we want a CMS. Oh, apparently my transitions are working. Well, how confusing is that? Okay. I did say all of them. Okay, so the UUA recommends the use of WordPress. And this is a fantastic conversation and debate that we could absolutely have after the session. WordPress is, I think, the reason that we tend to recommend it is that the size of the community of users is enormous. The best estimate right now is that somewhere between 25 and 35% of the web is based in WordPress. So the number of people out there who can support it is huge. The number of people in your congregations who have experience with it is huge. It also means that you get scales of economy that are quite different. While many people know it from its origins 10 years ago as a blogging system, it's not really that anymore. It matches most of the other CMSs in terms of its ability to create all kinds of custom content types and those pieces. It also has a lot of modular features, plugins and themes that allow you to not load up your site with all kinds of things you don't use. So it gives you a pretty bare bones system, and then you add in the pieces that you want. This one's going to be surprising to folks, but security is absolutely one of the things you get with WordPress, and the reason that you get it is that because the user base is so large, the speed with which problems are fixed is much faster. If you are in a private or a proprietary system, the only people responsible for fixing the security in that system are the people who work there. And a lot of the hosted managed systems have very, very small tech teams, and their ability to solve for large technical vulnerabilities, like we saw with, forgetting that, their ability to solve those problems is much smaller compared to the WordPress user base, which is enormous and has WordPress security firms working on this exclusively. So there are large pieces of, while it is certainly a target because of its size, it also gets patches much faster than just about anybody else. There's a strong technical base for SEO. SEO stands for search engine optimization, being findable. There's kind of two sides to SEO. One is the technical piece of actually labeling things correctly in code, and the other half is something that Sarah's going to talk about later, and that's using words that are attractive to people. The last piece I want to mention, actually there's two more, sorry. Special features. The ability to post to your site by email is right there. There's a technology called Press This, which if we have time I'll show you. There's all kinds of things built into where WordPress is going, and the most significant of those is one that's coming up this year called the API the WordPress API that's going to give us the ability to aggregate and develop the ability to pull content out of our sites and pull them together. So I know this sounds a little technical at the moment, but the capacity for all of us to be posting our sermons using the same structure and using categories and being able to pull those into a space that says, show me all of the Unitarian writing on Black Lives Matter this week. Show me all of the events that are tagged OWL. And let us build maps that are drawn out of our congregational sites so that you don't have to upload your sermon to Worship Web, and you don't have to upload your event to this site, and you don't have to upload your thing here. You're going to open up. What the API is going to do is make your site accessible to robots, and yeah, I've got a sermon about robots. I'll tell you about that sometime. But the capacity for us to be more interrelational in our content is actually a big piece. Your ability to pull content from your regional sites and district sites, there aren't districts anymore, are there? Cluster sites.
What does API mean?
API stands for Application Program Interface. And it also stands for other. Application Program Interface. So basically how one program talks to another program. So Facebook has data, and Facebook has an API that allows me to get data out of Facebook in my system. Okay? So we started to talk to people, and we started to look at the questions we've gotten on the Webster's list and in the website lab, and we started to look at what are the priorities that we have in producing a theme for congregations to use. And the first of those is focus on user needs and audience. So rather than starting from, well, what are the structures that we think it ought to be organized by, we decided to go and ask some people. And that's actually our best practice and probably the most significant recommendation we will make in this workshop. Go talk to people, ask them, ask the people who are users. But also to recognize that our audiences are quite diverse. So being able to span across the expectations of different generations, the design that works for people who are in need of a kind of conventional internet and people who are looking for more advanced functionalities. The second thing is we were looking for a very high level of accessibility. And this is largely because we consider this a justice issue. It's also an audience issue. We have a growing population with failing eyesight. And it's actually a pretty hard needle to thread. Accessibility is a difficult thing, and we, with the theme, will be trying to match the UUA's commitment, which is to WCAG2, which is a very high level of accessibility and much higher than most denominations would find. The reason it's a hard needle to thread is that the needs of different groups are different. So people with failing eyesight need high contrast. People with dyslexia need mid-level contrast. People who are colorblind can't read what dyslexics can read. And so everything's kind of working against itself, and there's this very, very narrow piece that kind of works for just about everybody. It doesn't tend to produce the sexiest website you've ever seen, but it does produce one that's highly usable and that reflects our bold, compassionate, reverent stance. So some of the other things we want to do in this is to encourage best practices. So we were talking about navigation and clicking through earlier. Sarah's been running tree tests on the navigation and trying to get people to figure out, if you were looking for programs for elementary school students, what kind of page would you look for? Where would you expect to find that? And so Sarah's got lots of people, and I'm sure some of them are in the room, who have been running some of those tree tests and going through, and we will keep doing that. Also wayfinding, which is if you've been on websites and you've seen breadcrumbs, things that give you cues as to where you are in the website. Oftentimes because most websites now, what I found in some of my client work is that they're averaging under 40% start from the home page. Most are starting from interior pages linked from elsewhere. Okay, so coming out of Facebook, coming out of a share on Twitter, coming out of a link in a newsletter, they're ending up at an interior page and being like, I have no idea where I am in the context of this website. So providing wayfinding things like breadcrumbs is important. Specific navigation within sections. We're also committing ourselves to some of the best principles of navigation, which are you want to typically limit menu items to about 7 things, because that's the limit of what we can remember. When we get to the 8th thing, we forget the first one. We also don't tend to want to go more than 3 levels deep, because that's kind of the threshold that people have for how far they'll click down into a thing. So that produces all kinds of new constraints. Probably the biggest part of this project is not actually the design, the building of the theme. It's going to be all of the videos and writing we'll do around it that explain why, and that explain how to use it. So we're going to walk you through step by step how to implement a site using this theme. Other best practices, the use of social sharing, the use of recommended plugins. This is one of the most common questions we get in the website lab is, I'm looking for an event plugin. And you go to WordPress and you say event plugin, and it says there's 643 options. Which one would you like? Which is, pretty difficult for people who are not technical people, who can't look at it and say, well, these guys have absolutely no sense of the dry principle in their programming. If you can't do that, your ability to evaluate the plugin and its security and its function is limited. So we're going to do that for you. For all of the central functions of the site, around events, around sermons, we're going to use public plugins, and we're going to show you how to use them effectively, and we're going to recommend the ones that we think work best. Okay? Responsive design for mobile devices, somebody mentioned that before. Estimates around mobile use of websites, my guess is that churches are lower than the average. You're saying no. My sense is that they're ever so slightly lower. At least I really hope they're lower, otherwise a lot of us are failing. Responsive sites adjust to the size of the screen. That's effectively all it means. So they respond to the size of the screen.
You don't have to go like this to
Yeah,
read
you're
the
not
church
pinching
website.
Yeah. Which incidentally, if you can do that in your email newsletters, that would be great too. Design that reflects our bold, compassionate, and reverent identity. So the UUA did a lot of work in looking at the use of images, the kinds of colors, and we're using a lot of that and trying to build on that, recognizing that it has been tested. And so while a lot of us have a lot of preferences that say that red is too pink, the colors have been tested. And they've been tested for accessibility, and they've been tested with audiences. So there's a piece here of like, we're going to be really rational, and we're going to be evidence-based, and I know that's rare for us to be concerned about that. But I think it's really helpful to be mindful of that when we're looking at designs. So I just realized that I've gone through the list and haven't actually shown you anything, so that's probably annoying. We'll also recognize some of the challenges that if you go to the WordPress gallery on ThemeForest to go download a theme, you'll find that they are highly dependent on pictures that are this big at full resolution, and they're this wide and this tall. And that's a challenge that gets created when you go looking for these are effectively trendier themes. The trend is towards that. It's certainly not a necessity, and we're recognizing the constraints that congregations have, that the pictures you have may not be formatted like that, may not look like that. So we're sticking to nothing wider than 2/3 of the page. So your pictures will work. Yay! I don't know if you actually had that experience of trying to install a commercial theme and been like, I have no pictures that actually fit this. And so it looks kind of crazy. So let's actually go, and you can't get to this because it's actually just on my computer. So this is, where are we? I can't really, okay. Oh, that's weird. It's different on that. Okay, that's fine. So this is the Unitarian Universalist Church of Twin Peaks. I'm a bit of a David Lynch fan. You'll see the menu up at the top: home, about us, news, worship, learning, justice, connection. Those have kind of gone through Sarah's test. Oh, right. That's probably easier to see. You'll also find right up at the top Sunday services. The most important thing: directions, search, give, and contact. The fundraising stewardship office suggests that give should really be up at the top and accessible to your members. Clicking on directions brings down the directions immediately. You're not being sent to another page. If you're looking for the search, and putting the office hours in there as well, link to the Google Map directions. The important thing here is that when you do this in the theme, all you're going to do is put your address in a box. And then this is all going to get auto-generated. Okay? You don't need to figure out how the map works, and you don't need to figure out how the address thing works. You're just going to put your address in a box, and it's going to generate this stuff for you. Okay? The search likewise is right up at the top. The part of the thing we wanted to be mindful of when we started was looking at what are the things that need to be on every page? What are the things that if I land on an interior page, I'm still probably looking for? Direction search, Sunday services, when are they? So there's the whole homepage is all modular. So this could be a slider, it could be a video, it could be a single picture, it could be whatever. We'll give you lots of options. One of the things we did here was that for newcomers and for congregation members, the first and most consistent thing they're looking for on the site is what's happening this Sunday. So what's the first thing we want to give them? The thing they asked for. What's happening this Sunday? We also do links to upcoming services, the service archive, and a quick link to first-time visitors, because we want to send people to a page that can contextualize for them some of the content on the site. Like those questions that were on the ORUC, O-R-U-U-C, I don't know if they pronounce it out. I don't know. ORUUC's site, when you got to that FAQ, the accordioned FAQ, 4 of the 5 questions were basically, I've never been before, what's it like? So we want to give people quick access to that. Then we get 3 feature widget boxes. You can do whatever you want with this space. What we found in looking at congregation sites is that almost everybody has some variation of 3 boxes that have either something about who they are and what they're doing in the community, so kind of like the large storytelling pieces, or they're the fall fair is coming up and the pledge drive just started and something else. And those are the boxes they want to profile. And so being mindful of when you're doing this, when you're producing your content, you're looking at it through your persona's eyes, saying, if I am this person, is there something for me in this? Okay. One thing I just want to go back and talk a little bit about a best practice. You'll note that in the slider, these aren't links to things. Sliders are terribly, terribly ineffective for anything other than storytelling like this. If you are looking for people to interact with them, anything after the first one gets no clicks at all, and typically the first one has an interaction rate on the page of less than 1%. People see them as ads and they skip right past them. The carousel thing, like this big sliding thing here.
Pictures.
So oftentimes what you'll get is on church websites is you'll get the next fundraising fall fair thing is one of the slides, and the one after that is sign up for theme groups. And people wonder why nobody's signing up for the theme groups. Nobody saw the slider that was sign up for theme groups because they don't pay attention to it. Our eyes skip right over them and treat them as advertisements, and they have extraordinarily low interaction rates. So it's just something to be aware of. I quite like them as storytelling tools. Okay? So just be mindful of a lot of congregations have really good videos now that might take a better place there. So moving down the page, yeah, a lot of the detail gets lost on the screen. Recent news events, and I will try to talk any one of you into putting testimonials on your homepage and on every page of your website. This is we've learned it from Amazon, we've learned it from all over the place, that people like you like this thing. Doing testimonials allows you to do that in other people's words. And so and I will speak for my generation and younger, we are even more distrustful of institutional messaging than the boomers were. And I'll fight you for that too. But there's a piece there about letting people tell their own stories with their faces attached. Okay, you may do testimonials in your congregations. How many people do testimonials in their congregations? Yeah, it's a pretty common feature. Linking through to the full ones is a great way to introduce people to members of the congregation in their own words. Sarah was talking earlier about people who visit you before they actually visit you. Tandy Rogers has a great story about a military family that moved into a community and greeted everybody by name because they had been watching for a year, trying to figure out where they were going to move to when they came back to the States. And they'd been participating in the live streaming, and they'd been watching the congregation every Sunday morning. They were watching the church worship, and they were meeting the congregation, and they were reading the testimonials, and they got there and they knew the people. What does your congregation's website do in terms of allowing people to join you before they're there? So think about that. There will be a newsletter widget thing down here at the bottom that'll allow you to plug in your Emma code or your MailChimp code or your Constant Contact or Campaign Monitor or whichever one you're on. I think we're encouraging Emma. Yes, the UUA has a special agreement with Emma. Down at the bottom, this. Whoops, what? Huh? What happened? What?
What's an Emma? You want me to explain it?
Oh, sorry. Emma is okay. Yeah, feel free to give me the I have no idea what you're talking about. Head shake. Email news list management. Your weekly email newsletter, your monthly email newsletter, whatever, is sent out via a service for the most part. Most of us use a service for this, and if you aren't, you should. MailChimp is what a lot of our congregations use now. There's also companies called Campaign Monitor, Constant Contact that offer similar services. The UUA negotiated with Emma, which is another one of those services, to put templated systems in there and to negotiate a substantial discount, I think, from their normal rates. So you can, I'll let Sarah talk a little more
You
about
can learn more if you go to uua.org/communications, and you can find out more about how you can do that for your congregation.
Sorry, would that include video of the sermon?
It's just.
In the newsletter? No, you can't embed video in a newsletter. If that's what you're asking, I'm not sure. Okay. Okay. So then we get to the footer, and these are basically 4 widgets, so you can kind of do whatever you like with. We'd love if the bottom right-hand corner was a nod to the UUA and to the, if you're a welcoming congregation, that's the new welcoming congregation logo. And we'll put together a green sanctuary one that fits there as well. So you want to use that footer space to do stuff that should appear on every page, but is less significant. Okay? So that's kind of the home page. It's all very modular. All of these things can be moved around on the page and changed and restructured. 11:30, we would say, okay. Okay, so, yeah. The rest of the site kind of looks like that. There's a sermon archive being built into it. That's not, we're still very, very much at early stages. But being built into it is the ability to submit an event into the calendar, which I know is something that a lot of our congregations struggle with, is people sending emails back and forth about trying to book events and book rooms and that kind of thing. Being able to automate that and integrate it is helpful. If you want to replace it all with your Google Calendar, that's fine too. Just trying to.
Will it be possible to share the calendar with other congregations?
How do you mean?
Populate each other's calendars?
So the question was, would you be able to share your calendar to with other congregations so that they could populate it? You're back to my favorite topic of the API, and that's actually not something that would be built into the system unless you gave somebody permission. But the significant thing in it is that you wouldn't have the ability to post something to yours and have it automatically be added to theirs as well. That would not be possible. Okay. September. So I'm just going to try and move through the rest of it. We've kind of blocked the last 15 minutes. We're also note that questions that are about kind of your congregation specifically, I'm going to be around, I have nothing else to do now after this is done. And so that's, I'll be around and Sarah will be around to answer kind of specific questions to your context later. So I'm just going to skip forward just a touch. I just want to show you how it's behind the power, okay. How do I get rid of the PowerPoint? Safari. Oh, there it is. Okay. There's Safari. I don't know if you were seeing the same thing I am. That's kind of funny. Sorry? You'll get it from uua.org, I'm guessing /communications. No, it's actually just on this machine.
Do you want to say about the July?
Yeah. So we'll still be coding through the end of July, and then in August we're going to have a couple of congregations be our field testers to tell us whether or not the documentation we've written actually helps you do it. If it turns out that your ability to implement it is limited because we haven't written it properly, we want to fix that before we tell everybody to go use it. So congregations that are interested in being pilot testers in August, come talk to me afterwards, and we'll put you on the little list. I just wanted to give you a sense of what it looks like without the admin stuff in the back. So this is what an event would look like, and you can also enable bookings. So if people want to make reservations for an event, so this is part of the recommended plugin system. So we'll be styling things to match the recommended plugins. You can use other ones if you like, but there's a reason we recommend these ones. There's a piece of kind of a parallel that I'd like to offer. The reason that we're trying to give such a structured experience to this is a lot like when you come to a congregation, somebody who isn't familiar with liturgy and structure, do you give them a blank order of service and say, hey, go nuts? Probably not. You give them a structure to fit themselves into. And that's what we want to do here. We've gone through and figured out the best practices, the best plugins, and all those pieces. We'll also have probably 4 color schemes to choose from. You will not have the ability to change all the colors on the site, mostly because eventually people changing the colors on the site won't be people in this room. And so they will not have heard me say that doing that often breaks the accessibility of the site. So we're building the best practices and the accessibility in with the intention that you choose between a number of color schemes. Okay? So it's less customization, but better. Do you want to? I'm done. Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to pass it back to Sarah, and I will answer all your questions about the website.
We're very, very excited to be able to offer this to congregations because our sites really are a way that we present Unitarian Universalism to the world, and we want to make that as easy as possible for folks. But the things that are going to be your part to come up with are your stories, your pictures, your people, and your language to put them into the site. And I'm just going to briefly give some guidelines about how to do this with pictures and with language. This is a beautiful site from the UU Church of Urbana-Champaign, Illinois. They chose 4 pictures. They basically, this is their homepage. It starts with this picture. It goes next to this picture, this one, and this one. They decided that the core of who they were could be communicated through pictures, and those pictures were worth at least several hundred words that used to appear on the homepage, and that people can click. Once they feel that emotional connection through the visuals on the site, they're inspired to say, okay, who are these people? I want to visit, I want to connect, and to follow the links there. Pictures are extremely, extremely valuable in connecting with people emotionally and are a big part of the user experience. The user experience involves thinking and feeling, and that should be our guide. So we work on thinking and feeling with their frames of reference. So we talked about personas earlier, and we referred a little bit to testing with actual users. And there are some interesting ways to do this that don't involve sitting with actual users in person. There's a group or a website called Feedback Army. We've used this for UUA.org. You can just show like a picture of your site as you've designed it and ask people, say, 5 questions, and random anonymous folks will give you their feedback, and then you can ask them to say a little bit about themselves, like they're a spiritual progressive or if they're like a religious conservative or something like that, to try to figure out if they fit into your target demographic. But it's actually really valuable just to get that few seconds gut check on the visuals of a site from anonymous users. Optimal Workshop is another group. They do charge a fair bit of money, and we actually are doing a lot of the work for folks on Optimal Workshop to develop a menu. But Optimal Workshop can take all of the things that you might cover in your site, all the different page names, and have people, just anonymous folks, or folks who say who they are, sort those into logical categories, and then you can test the whole menu tree from those to see if it makes sense. So I put the menu that we're using for the template in there, and I said, okay, you need to figure out, so you aren't a member of the congregation, and your parent just died, and you want to have their memorial service at the church. Where do you look on the menu? And I learned that like 80% of people couldn't find that in the way that we typically have our information on menus. So then we reconfigured some things, and then then most people can find it now, but It also shows that a significant number of people are going to go look in the About Us section, so we should have some link from that section back to memorial services. So it gives you a lot of really good data, testing it to see how people's minds work, because you really don't want to have them have to think too much in order to find information on the site. And you especially don't want them to have to get into your brain to do it. You want them to be able to use their brain. So you can also test in person. You can watch people use the site to accomplish tasks. You can just sit down and say, okay, here's our prototype site. You, my friend, who don't know anything about my congregation, but you're kind of a UU-friendly person, why don't you browse through this? Okay, how do you find out how to get here? How do you find out where to view past sermons, etc.? So in language, we try to use user-inclusive language, like you and we, because we're telling our story and we want them to be part of it. We don't want it to be just broadcasting, like informational. There's some real connection that we can have with the user in that way. And you also want to use language about what they know and what they search for. Now, very interestingly, this has made me, in developing content for UUA.org, have to really look at what kind of insider language we have. Like, people who haven't participated in a congregation are not really going to know what you're talking about if one of your links says lifespan faith development. I know what that means, but what is that actually, in their mind, it's like Sunday school for kids and classes for adults. But you don't call it Sunday school. So you try to find that language in there that works for your congregation, but also is going to be recognizable by people who aren't already a part of it. Or like you might have a link called Our Whole Lives, and they're like, oh, cool, the congregation ministers to me my whole life. Instead of recognizing that it's about comprehensive sexuality education. And they get there and they're like, oh, wow. And also that by the nature of being a UU congregation, we know a lot about history that other adults don't know, because we know about things like the Transcendentalists, and, so we gotta look out for insider language on those things. And what people search for, like gay church is a big thing that people search for. And if we're writing, we are an LGBTQ inclusive congregation, that title is not going to hit any search engines. So you try to write it, like you don't want to say we're the gay church, but you also want to have those words in there somewhere. And that's part of the language of search engine optimization. Also, for example, very few of our UU congregations do baptisms, but a lot of people come to UUA.org and look up UU baptism because they are religious liberals or interfaith families and they want to have some kind of ceremony for their kid and they don't know what to call it. So we mention baptism on that page so that it'll come up in a search result for UU baptism. Also, my goodness, our time is escaping us real quickly. This is all stuff that you can find a lot more about on the internet, but I'll just briefly introduce you. People do not read a web page like a book. They don't start at the beginning and go to the bottom. These are heat maps. The red, they hooked up a screen to somebody's, like some kind of reader on people's eyes to show where they actually looked on the website. The typical people read websites in an F pattern. Like you kind of scan across the top at the headline, scan the headers that stick out like an F, and then like look at a bulleted list. But just like that persona with First Parish in Cambridge, she missed the really nice piece about UU beliefs because it was sandwiched between two headers. Her eyes are just scanning. That's how we all read websites, but often when we sit down to write them, we start, writing them like a book. We also try to put our important points first in a way that will be seen visually with good headers that lead to that information. Clear headers and subheaders, bulleted lists, and also with links. If you write link or click here and that's your link, you see how your eyes are just drawn to that blue underlined text up there? You should use that real estate for important words, like a high impact word like our bold and compassionate work for justice. And then you follow that link and it goes to the page on justice. But that's what the eyes are going to gravitate toward. And also to save long-form prose, not for the website, but for your blogs, for your sermons. Interestingly, long blogs get shared more than short blogs. So that's your place for your long-form prose. We also try 8th grade reading level to shoot for that. There are actual 8th graders reading the site, but also that'll be accessible to most adults. And this is a link for accessibility pointers. A lot of accessibility, as Chris mentioned, is built into the template, but if you're developing your own site, there's a lot of great pointers, uua.org/communications/websites/accessibility. So in summary, we want to know our users. We want to know who they are. We want to know how they think. And then from that, we work to communicate positively, authentically, and clearly, inclusively, and responsibly. This is not just one of our many communications vehicles. This is our front door. This is our greeting, the beginning or close to the beginning of people's user experience of Unitarian Universalism. So we've got some time for questions and answers, and we have many questions that are appropriate for your own group, and Chris has wonderfully volunteered himself. I encourage folks to line up as you're able. If you would like a mic brought to you, please wave your hand and indicate that. And we'll do our best to briefly go through these. And again, just a reminder, if your question, we want to speak to questions that everyone can benefit hearing from, and specifics can be saved for later. All right, I recognize the gentleman at the microphone.
Yes, hi. Our church is currently transitioning to the old UUA template. How difficult would it be to move all that stuff we've been working on to this new template?
Oh, do you mean the UU 2015 template that it was not a UUA, but it was developed by Dan Flippo, that one, on WordPress?
It's on WordPress, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's called UU 2014. It was designed by a fellow named Dan Flippo, who did a yeoman's job and really kind of set the standard in accessibility. And so in terms of transitioning your content from one to the other, it's actually going to be pretty insignificant. It's all stored effectively the same way. Where you may run into some issues is that we use more structured data around your sermons and events that is not built into that theme. So some of those you may need to select them and then go to a post-theme switcher, a post-type switcher, which I can tell you how to do. But that's what the UU, come and ask those questions in the UU website lab on Facebook.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. It would not be hard to switch.
Hi, John Lewis from Vashon Island in Washington State. I have a big macro question. How many congregations, UU congregations, are live streaming currently their sermons or events? Do we have any data on that? Or anybody in the room doing it?
Yeah, why don't we do a quick straw poll of who's live streaming? Okay. There was a great article in UU World about live streaming worship and events, and I think it came out on the web last month, so you can check that out. But I don't have a number.
Fantastic. Second question is more specific to the WordPress theme. Are you allowed? Is there a users and groups functionality to it? Is it just one macro login, or are there different?
No, there's pretty fine-grained permission controls. So you can actually create different role levels and say we only want. We're going to create a user role that is RE, and they can only edit the RE pages and add things to the RE news, and so you can make those restrictions. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm from Mission Viejo in California. I had a quick question about video embedding into the new way that we can do our sites. Can we put an embed code in and it'll like take a Vimeo clip and put it right in there with the player
It's actually
embedded?
even easier than getting the embed code.
Paste the link in?
Yeah, it uses something called OEmbed, which is an open embed system. So all you do is you put the link.
Perfect.
And
okay,
it embeds it, and it auto resizes it to match the size of the column it's in.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, one of the things that you talked about was certain points that should be on every page within the website, and it seems to me one of those things should be a donate now button. It's something we've struggled with. Is there an ability through the new template for people to make donations online?
Yeah, well, there, in the header that appears on every page, there's a section called Give, and congregations will be able to work on whatever those subpages are to be able to incorporate that. So.
Yeah, we can, yeah, the link is kind of up to you. The technology to do it would not be something we would build in, because it's the level of variation between congregations would be too high.
But there are a lot of plugins to be able to make online donations through WordPress sites that'll make it a lot easier than, I know my former congregation was using Vanco. It was very complicated. There's a lot of easier ways to do it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Maureen McHale from Long Beach, California. And my question is about the pictures of the testimonials with the names and the pictures of the people. And I know that with children, we've had some of my members have had concerns. So I'm just curious, what is the current philosophy and what is the knowledge about predatory website activity?
Well, what we encourage very strongly with all of our sites is that there be written permission about sharing photos online. For minors, it should come from their parent or guardian, and for adults, it should come from themselves. And we're actually in the process of developing a recommended permission form that congregations can use, not only for internal in the congregation, but also that they can also check a box to enable the congregation to give a set of photos that includes them in it to the UUA to be able to put online. But we really, the best knowledge about it is to just not have children's names associated with the page, and every congregation does need to decide what is right for them, because currently there are plenty of congregations that post pictures on their websites, on Facebook, of minors who are in their congregation, and they feel okay about it. They've gotten to a good point in their discussions about it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you may have already touched base on this question. You said something about documentation, and I was just wondering, are you going to develop, or do you have a link that you can direct us to for WordPress tutorial that may, make this?
Yes, and more than that, we'll help you by sending you to good ones.
Well, that was,
that's one of the pieces of,
there's a bajillion.
There are so many WordPress tutorials out there, and so we'll provide links to kind of learning WordPress, and then links to, and then the videos and text for how to use WordPress with this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's do one more question.
Sorry, last question.
I'm Beth Ogilvie from Hayward, California. I'm wondering if the UUA has negotiated with hosting companies, and do you recommend a third-party security service like SiteLock?
As far as I know, the UUA does not have a hosting agreement negotiated with anybody, but they're not working on it. There's a number of people who recommend, in the website lab, DreamHost is widely recommended because they provide free hosting for nonprofits. So DreamHost is one that many people go to. It's called DreamHost, D-R-E, Dream. I have a DreamHost. And they are often recommended in the website lab. My tendency would be to spend a little bit more money because I think it's worth it on a managed hosting service like WP Engine or Pantheon, or there's a number of others. And they'll be much more expensive than you're used to paying for hosting. They'll be $25 to $30 a month, but they'll be much more reliable, much faster, much more secure, and they'll take care of a lot of the updates that you may miss, and then your site gets hacked. So,
is that information on the UUA
that listing probably wouldn't be, but it's certainly in the website lab numerous times. So, yeah.
The listing for the security information he just discussed, or the host information, is in the UU website lab on Facebook, which is a group that Chris manages on Facebook. We are at our time. I'd like to thank you, and please invite everyone to ask more questions as you come up. And I just want to close to say, so this workshop is called Make Your Website Awesome and Make It Yours. So may the tools that we have discussed here today and the questions that have and ideas that have been sparked in your minds, may they ultimately serve the mission and the vision of your group and of Unitarian Universalism in the world. We are here to change lives, and effective communications, effective websites are one of the ways that we do that. We change lives, and we change the world with our love. So may you go with our blessing and make it so.